First of all, thank you guys so much for coming. I love Terri. I love that we get to gather together. I think there's something so delicious and important and sacred and fun when women come together, especially to support other women. So Terri wrote this book. I feel like Mr. Rogers holding it up. And we are going to do a little interview. I have some questions for her. And then we are going to do a toast with champagne to just really celebrate, not that you wrote this book, but everything that you had to do in your life so that you could write this book. Ooh, juicy. So let's get into it, shall we?
We shall.
Okay, so first and foremost, because it is in the title of this book, it says too much, and then it says a guide to breaking the cycle of high-functioning codependency. It's interesting how the wanting to take care of everything actually turns out to be codependent. I remember when I went to Onsite and they were talking about codependency, I was like, oh, that's not me, because I don't need I'm not codependent. I'm totally good. And then they talked about what you could be if you're codependent. I was like, oh my God, it's horrible. It's me. So what are the common myths about codependency?
Well, I'd say the number one myth is that you have to be involved with an addict. You're enabling an addict and their behavior. That's the only way to be codependent, which is not accurate.
Okay.
Myths of codependency. You're weak. If you're codependent, you're dependent on others. You can't get stuff done. Myth, right? These are the myths that, for me, in my therapy practice, I would see these patterns and I would say, hey, what you're describing is a codependent pattern. And that client would immediately, because they're all like you or like me, they'd be like, no way, man. No, you're talking about someone else because I'm the one that everyone comes to. Everyone depends on me. I'm making all the dough. I manage all the household stuff. I'm doing all the emotional labor. So obviously, I can't be codependent. I can't. I'm like, oh, my clients don't know what codependency is. So let's just establish what it is.
Okay.
You're overly invested in the feeling states, the outcomes, the situations, the circumstances of the people in your life. Could be the financial situation of the people in your life, to the detriment of your own internal peace. It could be everyone's like, not it. I know what you're talking about. Start passing them out. And it could also be the detriment of your financial well-being, your emotional well-being, where it's feeling overly responsible for the people that we love. And what I think happens, and the pushback that I get, is that, of course, we're all lovers, we're mothers, we're friends. Obviously, we're invested in the people we love being happy, of course. When you're an HFC, you're overly invested. And at its real core, and this is the hard one for people to really wrap their skull around, but at its core, high-functioning codependency is an overt or a covert bid to control other people's outcomes. We just don't want our friend to marry that stupid idiot. We just don't want our grown child to be fired from their job because they were wasted again and didn't go into work, and so we lie for them. Right? We just don't want there to be any problems or any trouble. When I added the high-functioning moniker, because the irony with high-functioning codependency is that the more capable you are, the less codependency looks like codependency, but it's still codependency. So you're still suffering in the same way. You're still racing towards burnout. Can't wait to get there, cannot stop, and won't stop until we hit a wall, right? Because you're definitely going to. So in the recognizing and being able to change that name for my clients, right, I needed them to recognize themselves in the disorder in order to help them heal from the disorder and get into recovery, because we're really not healing from this at all. But we can get into recovery. So as soon as I said high-functioning codependency, they were all like, me, I'm the problem, it's me, not to quote Taylor, but I will, without shame, though. They were like, that's right, I am doing all the things for all the people. And I think that the control piece is the piece that we don't think about. We're like, I just love you. I just want what's best for you. I'm just concerned for you. But there's a story that I told in the book, and I'll quickly tell it, about one of my sisters. I have 3 older sisters. Yeah. That one of my sisters was involved in an unhealthy relationship. So she was actively alcoholic. She was with someone who was doing crack. She was living with him in the woods, in a house without running water and no electricity. So like, I don't need to embellish that because that actually is the facts of the story. So you can imagine how much I wanted to not have that be the case for the sister that I loved, and how much I worked to get her out of it, to money, lawyers, books, what can I do? And so I remember going to my therapist and I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm saying, Bev, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? I've done everything. And she was like, Terri, what makes you think that you know what your sister needs to learn in this life? And I was like, well, I think we can all agree she doesn't need to do it with a crackhead in the woods. I mean, can we agree to that, you know? She was like, here's the thing, I can't agree because I'm not God, Terri. I'm not God. I don't know what Jenna needs to learn, but do you understand what's happening for you? And I was like, apparently I have no idea, so clue me in because I don't. And she said, you've worked really hard to create a harmonious life for yourself, and your sister's dumpster fire is really fucking with your peace, and you want to fix it so that your pain ends. And keep in mind, that really changed how I thought of myself. Because honestly, before that, not that I thought I was so fucking great, but I did think, like, I'm just a lover like that. I'm a little bit like Mother Teresa. I just want everyone to have what they want. I thought it was all like, I'm just doing it out of generosity. And then when the hard, cold truth of that I really was doing it out of a desire to control the outcome, that changed it a little, felt a little humiliation from that experience. But it also, I said to her, but what can I do then? So I didn't know I had a choice. I thought, obviously, as her sister, I just need to keep doing this until I get her out of there, right? It's on me, very HFC, to feel like it's on me to get her out of there. And my therapist said, you need boundaries, Terri. You don't need to talk to her about this abusive person. It's okay, because it was terrible for my nervous system. I was having a nervous breakdown about it because I couldn't control it. And so I put it in place and I said, hey, I can't really talk to you about your situation, but if you ever want to get out, I'm totally your person always. And about 9 months later, she called me and was like, are you still my person? And I was like, hi, I'm getting in my car right now. And I went and picked her up. She got sober, went back to school, did not go back with him, has not been in another abusive relationship. But the important part of the story, obviously, is that she's out of that scenario, and this was very, decades ago, but is that instead of it being me, the HFC, putting on the cape and being the hero of the story, my sister got to be the hero of her own story. We don't realize how much when we are compulsively auto-advice giving and auto-accommodating and fixing and doing and suggesting things, we don't realize how much we are centering other people's situations on ourselves. And that was hard to take, where I was like, wow, what is the loving thing to do though? So let's quickly just talk about what can we do instead, is we can ask expansive questions. If you did know what the answer was, what would it be? If you did know what to do, you can't leave right now, okay. So then right now, that's where you are. And listen, unless someone is about to die, right? I'm not saying we never do an intervention, right? And sometimes that is appropriate and we have to do it. But most of the time, if you think about the scenarios in your life where you are exerting or trying to exert your control, most of the times it's not life and death. Most of the times it's saying to a friend, make sure you take the 405 because remember there's construction on the 101. Do you know what I mean? We don't even want you to sit in traffic. We think of everything for everyone else. It's like you have a stadium of data about the people in your life, in your mind, what they like to eat, what they don't like to eat, how they are politically, but we don't expect the same from other people, and we barely know that information about ourselves.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. I remember when we first talked about this on the podcast a few years ago, and you said high functioning codependency, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And then it made me feel better about it. I was like, well, I'm high functioning at least, But
True.
But recently, my dad passed away in July, which was really hard and also powerful, and so many things just in that experience, just so many unbelievable gifts in that experience. And one thing that was a gift for me is that in April, a few months before he passed, I had the understanding that he would not be here very much longer. And I have been overfunctioning with everybody, but I think it really started with him probably when I was really little. And I wanted very much to just have a very real conversation with him. And that literally felt like moving a mountain. And I couldn't find the capacity to tolerate how uncomfortable it would be to have that conversation. So I just kept not having it.
Yep.
And instead, I would show up with all the gifts for him and all over the place be the person who he's like, we're so proud of her. She's so amazing. She's like, you know, and I could just stay in this role I was playing and over deliver all the time, which costed me my peace, not just in that relationship, but how we do one thing is everything. And so finally I woke up one day, you know, sometimes you realize you have this wounded self, but you also have this wise woman in you. And I woke up with this wise woman sort of leading, and I was like, it's happening today, let's go. And so I went and I spoke to him, and I thought it would be maybe an hour, and we talked for 4 hours. And in that conversation, I realized that what I had denied myself receiving, the intimacy, the realness, the love, the feeling that I could set down a cape, I could set down having the answers, I could set down being together, I could set down all of that and enjoy my life. I literally felt the next day like I couldn't believe it actually had happened because it felt so surreal and it felt so different. And since then, I've made so many Herculean changes. And that for me is what's on the other side. And what I want to ask you about is the courage to set boundaries, because so much of what you just said, which I fully relate to, is the little girl version of me felt that it was my job to manage everyone else's reactions and responses, to keep everything good and okay. So I would just pretzel myself, and I became so good at it that I can read the room, understand it, and then
become it.
Feel completely and totally exhausted and depleted in every second of my experience, because my experience was taking everybody's vote all the time and then producing the response and the thing that would lead to whatever. And fascinating to hear you say, and then also denying everybody who they get to be when they're uncomfortable, when they're triggered, when they get a chance to respond to what actually is what it is, versus me curating an experience or a conversation or whatever that is. So I'm very new. I feel like Bambi on the ice, you know what I mean? It's very new for me, but it's unbelievably exhilarating. And so I want to ask you about, how do we recognize when we're doing it? Because don't think you're not. I see. And then how do you learn to set a different tone, set a boundary, say what it is, and just let it, like the When Harry Met Sally, she's like, I'm just going to let it lie. See what I did? I put it out there. I just said I would let it lie, right? Like, how do we actually do that more often or sort of all the time so we can have a real experience of being ourselves?
Well, let's start with, what are the most common behaviors of being an HFC? Because I think if you can see yourself in the behaviors, you can go, oh, I get it. Because we can conceptualize it from a bigger point of view. But let's start with auto advice giving. So this is like one of the telltale signs where we just can't wait to tell you, well, we know exactly what you should do. We can't wait to tell you all the things. You may be asking, and a lot of times me, myself, put myself up as the person that people would come to, because I do have grade A advice, and I am smart, and I am scrappy, and I do know things. That just because you can doesn't mean you should. So auto advice giving is one. Auto accommodating. So it's just exhausting. We're just exhausted from doing it. I tell a story in the book about, I was at my very busy salon in Manhattan on a Saturday, which I never go on a Saturday because it's slammed, but that was the only day I could go. So I'm laying in the sink with like a mask on my hair, and now the sink traffic is backing up. And I'm laying there doing nothing, but I have the thing on my hair. And I'm thinking, the longer the line gets, the more anxious I become, where I'm like, I don't need to take up a sink. Like, I could move it. I don't know. So I flag someone down being like, hi, I could move, you know? And she's like, no shit, lady, whatever. Like, we're good. We do this every fucking Saturday. I know you're having a nervous breakdown for no reason, but we're good. And I realized when I was done, I mean, she was perfectly nice. It was no big deal. The sink traffic moved. I got done. My hair was great. But I had this epiphany at that moment where I was like, I've had 1,000 years of therapy. I'm a therapist, and I'm still doing this shit. I could be laying here meditating, resting my brain. I could be doing nothing. But instead, I'm over-functioning, feeling overly responsible for the sink flow at my salon. Wow, it can't just be me. So I ended up filming something about this, and it went viral. People were like, holy crap, me too. Why do we do this? What the hell's wrong with us? And that was the beginning of me being like, there needs to be a book about this. So with auto-accommodating, it's where we are so dialed into the environment outside of us, which this is different. Again, high-functioning codependency, when you're super capable, you actually have the bandwidth to be dialed in. So I see this as what happens outside of us, we still feel responsible for. It's not even our family. It's not even our friends. I mean, I opened the book in the introduction telling a story where I was probably 22 years old, and I was coming back from Long Island, 10:30 at night. I was living in the city, and I see a kid on the platform. Immediately, my helper thing went off, and I was like, what's this 19-year-old doing at 10:30 at night in Washington, wherever, Port Washington, where are you going? I asked him, as if it's any of my business, but I asked him anyway. And he was like, oh, I had a job. I was supposed to be driving a car back to Indiana, and then they just canceled the job. I go, so where are you going? He's like, I'm going to the station. I go, what station? He goes, yeah, I'm going to sleep in Penn Station. I was like, no, you're not, Billy. Have you been to Penn Station? You're going to die. It was the late 80s, too, keep in mind. The city was rough. He was like, well, I don't know anyone in New York. I was like, yeah, you do. You know me. I took the 19-year-old home to my house, and not like that, not like for fun. I had a female roommate living in a studio. I let this fucking stranger, because I felt so responsible for this boy's well-being, which is funny. He was 19, I was 22. I was like, I've got you, Billy, don't worry. But now listen, you may not have done that, let's say, but you all have your own Billy stories, feeling overly responsible for either people who want us to be responsible for them or people who don't. That kid seemed fine with his plan. I could have given him $5. I could have said, hey, you might want to go to a youth hostel and not die. I could have given different advice, but instead, I didn't trust. I felt like I had to take him home. So that exemplifies auto-accommodating right there. What are the other things? Overfunctioning. Doing things for other people that they can and should be doing for themselves. Being really pissed when people don't take our advice. We have this grade A advice, and then Betty doesn't do it. And then Betty ends up in a rough situation. You're like, well, if Betty had just can listen to me, I told her 6 months ago. Like, we can't wait. We won't tell Betty to her face, but we will say to other friends, like, I've got to be honest with you, 6 months ago I told her. So there's something about knowing it all and feeling compelled to control it all. But let's talk about the cost of doing that. It's the intimacy in your relationships. It's being known. If we live this way, people do not know us. Even the ones who are supposed to love us the most don't know us because we're not telling the truth. When we're saying yes, when we really want to say no, or as Cathy just described, like twisting yourself up in a pretzel and letting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. No one knows the Herculean lengths that we go to keep all of this shit running. The emotional labor, to keep a house running, kids. Who's thinking about camp for kids for next summer, right? Like all of the things, and who's not? The people we're in relationships with, because we create an over and under functioning dynamic that is not sustainable in the long run. Because first we get bitter, so you want to stop having sex with your person, you're just like, you don't know how to do anything. And even if they do it, they don't do it right because we're perfectionists, so they don't do it as efficiently as we do, being high functioning, and as quickly as we do. So even if your person is like, yeah, I got it, I'm going to totally do those things. You're like, but you're not going to do it fast enough and not well enough, so I'm probably still going to do it. So how do we move away from this behavior is the question. Let me see if are there other symptoms that we want to talk about, though?
Those are good.
Are we all feeling identified with
like,
what
oh
is
my
happening?
I should put a trigger warning on the book. Is this triggering? Too much? Too much truth at one time?
You might want to read this book with a drink.
No, it's
the warning.
interesting. It's so interesting because so many of the women that I know are just so unbelievably special and sensationally brilliant and gifted and kind, and they have made their husbands useless. Like, we want to do all the things, and we know about like the divine feminine, and we know about like all the ways that we can receive, and we learn to receive in our worlds and in our business and opportunities and friendships. And then there's this dynamic where people will say to me, oh my gosh, so tell me, what is it like to be your sister or your husband? They must be unbelievably good at manifesting. They must have incredible things happening in their life. And I'm like, so interesting you say that, because it's not the case. They're all almost convinced that they can't do it,
Right.
because I'm always taking up the space and doing it all for all of them all the time, which is exhausting and awful. So I recently said to my husband, I was like, whatever this is, this dynamic, I'm breaking up with it. It's awful. I can't see. I can't breathe. I don't know who I am. I don't know who you are. He goes, yeah, remember when we met? And like, I actually could give you sort of like leadership in your life and strength and I'm like, right, that's true. But I remember feeling a lack of worthiness around it. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to be like the best wife, and I'm also going to make money, and I'm also going to have a kid, and I'll have 3 kids, and then I'm going to do it well, and be conscious about it, and I'm going to do that. And it was like to the point where I was like, and I hear women say all the time, well, my next goal is to retire my husband. And I'm like, why?
Please
Why
stop.
do you keep saying that? That's what I used to say. Why do we say that? That's such poison. Why is that a thing? It's a weird thing. Like, he has a brain, he has a gift, he has a skill, he might want to use it. No, I'll retire him. I'll put him over there. What is that? Well, Dr. Shefali says that one of the most dangerous things for our generation is the modeling of women not receiving.
Yep.
And our true gift is just receiving, just being the muse, just elevating the consciousness in the room. That is how you're going to bring mazel and riches and goodness into your home. That being deeply anchored and grounded, right, in something that's so whole and so beautiful and so empathetic and so creative and so magnetic, right? That. And it is just uncanny. And now when I hear people say that, I'm like, no. It's not a good idea to retire your husband.
But imagine how it feels being on the receiving end. Imagine how it feels when we're really actively HFC in our relationships, whether that's friendships or sibling. We're literally saying, you are a problem for me to fix. You are a person that I will manage. It is so condescending to think that we know. And even with my sister's situation, it's okay to say, I know that someone being in an abusive relationship is not correct. But me saying, but I know exactly what you should do is incorrect.
Right.
And was robbing her of her sovereignty. And this is the same thing that we do to kids, to friends. Even if we're doing it, our heart's in the right place and we're doing it to a degree out of love, it doesn't feel that way. And when you really flip it when we're looking at boundaries, because yes, we can have difficulty telling the truth about our boundaries or our limits or what we want, but we also can really be some boundary tramplers ourselves. If we don't like what you're doing or don't agree with what you're saying, we're like, it's fucking ridiculous. No, listen, this is how we're going to do it. Like, I've got it figured out. And I think that what you gain when you learn to ask expansive questions, when you learn to let the chips fall where they may, when they're not your motherfucking chips, right? There's something so beautiful and relaxing. Like, just imagine if we take a deep breath right now. Just allow your shoulders to relax. Put it down. And we don't need to have conversations with people and be like, hi, there's a new boundary sheriff in town. It's all going to be different. Like, we don't need the bullhorn. All we need to do, and I walk you through it in this book, is one next right action at a time. And we do those changes because my clients can't wait to be like, all right, so I'm having a family gathering. I want to let everybody know. Everything's all going to be different now. I'm like, your family is like, hello, what? You've been doing it this way since the beginning of time. And now you're mad at me because I think that you should do all these things. I tell a story in the book about my sisters and I. My mother was a single mother. My parents got divorced when I was 13, and how my mother did everything, every single thing in the house. And I remember her partner at one time, her boyfriend, being like, we were all teenagers. My mother got up to clean the table and go do the dishes. Not one of us lazy motherfuckers moved to do anything. And he was like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
This is your mother.
Yeah.
She works as a waitress. Get off your ass and go help her. And I remember being like, whatever, shut up, like I was so mad. But then I realized how she had taught us that she did everything. And then, of course, I would grow up to then think, then I would do everything, right? That this is how it is.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that as much as he was saying, like, we were kind of bad, and in a way, maybe we were lazy, but there has to be a responsibility that we were taught the same way that we have trained the crap out of the people in our life, out of the people who work for us, out of our friends, out of our siblings, to expect a certain type of behavior from us. And as we start to change it, people are going to notice, right? You're changing your boundary dance. People are going to notice, and that's okay. Let them notice. They may say something, that's okay too. We can talk about it, but you have to, within yourself, we have to be able to go, this is unsustainable, and I want more for my relationships than being of service in this hyper way. Right. The hyper independence that comes with being HFC2 is notable, where we really do not want other people doing things for us. We're going to do it for all the people. And even this today, you, Cathy, hosting this beautiful experience, it was so hard to just say yes, right? Just allow. And I've been in recovery for years. So just know, there is no curing, but there definitely is recovery from these behaviors. It's just about your raised awareness, one behavior at a time.
It's interesting because, and this is a total separate topic we could spend time on because it's problematic, and I think there's a cure for it. But for what I was going to get to is, like, with my social media, okay, I've curated it so I only look at things that really please me. I don't, in fact, most people I'm following, I'm actually muted them. So, like, I only see, like, I see little chateaus in England where someone has, like, a garden, and then I see, like, someone making sugar cookies. Anyway, I bring that up because I want to be the girl in the garden, okay? And I look at it all the time because that's all I actually want to be looking at. You can do that too with your Instagram. It's really fun. You just, like, cut out everything else, and you're like, oh, I just want to look at, like, rain falling, and
yeah, I love it.
which is great. And it's so interesting because what you talked about when your hair was in the sink, mm-hmm. I have a meditation practice, which, thank God, it's like my thing. So that's great. And at the same time, because of how I know who I am, like what feels familiar to me in my identity, of course I was going to host your event. I host a million events. Mm-hmm. And I also have 3 kids. And I'm also a volunteer. I'm like the one at the school. Like, I'm that person at school too. Mm-hmm. And I'm this and I'm that. When I don't have anything to do, I don't know what I'm doing. And I actually go, is this sadness? Is this, what is it? So it's a really interesting, spicy, confronting feeling. Yep. Because for me, if you tell me, build a business, start a podcast, I'm like, great, what else? What else? Let's go. Like, that's my lane. So then comes a weekend day or time where I have off. So what I now do is, like, I'll go to the Hotel Bel Air Spa and I'll spend a couple hours there, which is awesome, right? Mm-hmm. I'll take my kids on a hike, which is great. But it really is challenging for me to be in the experience of just being here. And I know it's almost like being addicted to dopamine or something.
Oh,
it's
it
like,
is.
I only know my experience through getting into what your need is, or this problem I can solve, or what could make a difference in the world, or like,
yeah,
that was how I functioned and operated in the nuclear family that I had, which was so chaotic. Yep. That's how I find my peace. And so my husband's like, I know that you can take on the world, but could you sit next to me for 8 minutes on the couch and just sit there? And I'm like, oh my God, that's it's like, it's actual torture. And then I go, what are we gonna do? Do you wanna, like, what, can I help you with something? And he was like, no, you can't. What if you just sit here? What if you actually don't even talk? And I was just like, oh my God, he's literally, these are fighting words. Like, it's mean. I can't. So anyway, so I avoid that at all costs. And what do we do, Terri? My life is falling apart. See, I look so together, but really inside.
Let's look at, first of all, let's look at language. You used to be that way
5 minutes ago.
because you're changing.
That was before. That was at 11:58.
That's what I'm saying. So you're changing, right?
This changing, guys.
Right now,
Heard it here.
right in front of us. You have to challenge yourself, right? I had a therapist who challenged me because years ago I was exactly the same. And I used to always be rushing to work when I was living in the city for years. I was a talent agent, and I would come into therapy and be like, I cannot believe nobody knows how to commute. People don't know how to get the fuck out of the door. Like, just move it, bebop. Like, so mad, so rushing. She's like, Terri, listen, you complain about this every time you come into this office. So you need to learn to stop rushing. You think life is a race. It's all about accomplishment. It's not. So for the next 7 days, you must be the last person who gets on the train. And I was like, it's like you're 8 minutes on the couch, but imagine doing it every morning for 7 days. I was like, oh my God.
So sorry. That sounds
Yeah, it was very painful. So instead of positioning myself exactly where the doors were going to open so I could kick anybody out of the way and get on first and whatever, I literally had to wait. And what came up for me was so shocking. A, how hard it was to do. But what the profound realization was, why the fuck am I rushing my life away? Why? What am I running to? I'm still going to be 20 minutes early for work like I was all the time. I was the worst combination of time disorder, where you're always early but always rushing. Like the worst. You're like, you're still going to be early, but you're still like, get out of my way. So similar thing, not exactly the same, but similar, where you have to challenge yourself to do nothing. You have to challenge yourself. Listen, I'm glad you can go to the spa at Bel Air. Yay, fun. That's not the same. Allowing yourself to sit outside in your backyard and look at the view. You cannot be checking so many boxes. Our whole life is like one to-do list where it's like, oh, and if I did something that wasn't on the to-do list, now I write it so I can check it off. Like I can't wait to have more things on my to-do list that I did. And what I think you'll find is that feelings that we are doing to avoid
That's what it is.
are going to come up to be our friends, to inform our behavior, to give us information about the child within who really would like some attention. She doesn't want you to do more. She wants you to be more, to have more fun, to expand more, but not to have more fun and organize the rest of the world to have fun with you. Just you. Because you here have more fun and you're like, woo, I'm doing another party. Like, I mean, for ourselves.
Right.
And actually, I think the biggest takeaway from getting into recovery from HFC is the power of allowing others to add value to our lives and the power of surrender. Surrendering to what is. And when you're as powerful as all of us are and you're as capable as all of us are, it's really hard to not be like, I can fix this. I can change this. If someone in my team was like, well, no, I feel like we've done it all. I was like, well, I haven't even fucking started yet, so I don't even know. What do you mean we've done it all? Like, I literally haven't even started to problem solve. Giving up is just not part of the way that we're wired. But all of that, there's a cost. And the burnout rate is so high. And the autoimmune disorders that I see, and the insomnia, and all the women in perimenopause and menopause who are exactly what you described, Kath, is exactly what I'm seeing in my practice and happened to me too. Sometimes it takes getting into menopause to literally hit the wall. So the cycle of high-functioning codependency goes like this. Way too many fucks, literally none. You hit a wall, and you're like, not one left to give for any person or any situation. Like, I'm literally done. I don't care.
Yeah.
Now, when we are actually in recovery, we will swing back to the middle. We can care, we can allow, we can decide, we can be in surrender. But if you're at the I give zero place, that is a reaction to the bleeding of this bandwidth for decades for some people. It's just so exhausting. And there's a better way to live.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm hopefully showing you in this book.
Yeah, buy the book. Buy it for a friend. Buy it for 5 friends.
Buy it for 5.
So we'll wrap up in the next 5 minutes. When my dad passed it was in July, I was with him for 6 days in hospice, and then we had 7 days. I'm Jewish, so we sit Shiva for 7 days. I didn't want it to end. It was unbelievably gorgeous, and it was just the best. Like, the amount of love between my dad and I in hospice, the looks we gave each other, the tears, the smiles, the intimacy. Like, I was feeding him ice chips and singing him Barry Manilow songs, and nothing is missing in the room. I'm just like, God, I love you forever, and I know you love me, and this is what love feels like, and we're so intimate, and like, we're just right here in this room, and like, we're ushering you into the next world. I mean, it's just the most radical love that you could ever feel. And he's holding my hand, and it's just so awesome, like awesome, right? And then I said to my sister, I was like, my parents were divorced, and his wife, my stepmom, was going through a lot. And my mom, I had brought her into hospice, and they had a beautiful moment at the end. But I said to my sister, you know, we were going to go back to Los Angeles. We live here, they're in Florida, to sit Shiva here. And I'm like, I'm going to stay and be with them. And my sister's like, I really think you should give yourself these 7 days for you, for your friends to sit. You're going to take care of mom. Mom's going to want to go shopping. Yep. Mom's going to want to, you're just going to be out of it. Like, for her. And I really didn't want to get on the plane. So I booked a different flight for myself, and I booked them a flight. And my sister's like, I'm going to let you make your choice. But if I could be in charge, I'd put you on the plane. Okay, so I come back. And the rules are, you're going to sit here. That's it.
Yeah.
You can't even get your own food. People get food for you. People would come in the door as they truly are, and just the looks that people give you. It was the most sacred. I was like, it's so weird to say, but it's like, can it always be this? Like, can we all just be here together? Like, I wasn't wearing makeup. I'm sitting on the floor. People walk in. They get it. Everybody gets it. No one wanted to leave every night. No one wanted to leave. And the re-entry was really hard. The re-entry to the world the day after, I was like, cars drive so fast.
Yeah.
Oh, they know. My dad died.
Yes.
The sky is different. The world is different. Like, I'm different.
Yeah.
And you're moving so fast. So I said, Dad, like, he died so much younger than his parents. His parents died in their 90s. My dad was 76. And I said, you sacrificed 2 decades of your life for me to get this. I know it. Because he used to say, you're so amazing, but like, slow down. Like, I'm so worried about you. And it's just truly awesome how these really painful experiences give you so much. You get so much in it. And what I'm getting in this experience is how much easier my life gets to be.
Yeah.
How much more joyful.
Yes.
And how people just, they love loving you. God, do they love it. They're like, oh my God, you just let me like bring you food and sit with you. Like, that's what I get to do. It's like, I feel like someone turned all the lights on in the world. And so I will say I'm changing, because I said I had changed 5 minutes ago, but no, it was really, my dad passed away on July 3rd. And I feel like it's like someone hit Control-Alt-Delete on the software and just cleared the cache.
Right, but part of, can I say something about the Shiva?
Yeah.
Is part of what, if you think about what's different for you in that moment, it's you allowing your good, you surrendering to the love of others, you letting people do for you what you do for fucking everybody all the time. And the thing is, Kath, when we're in recovery from this, it can always be like that, meaning mutuality, real interdependence, where we go from codependence to actual interdependence, where I depend on you and you depend on me, and when you need something, I give it, and when I need something, you give it, because we're giving up the need to control all the things. And what you felt, why you didn't want it to end, A, is because you've been in a desert of not allowing, and it's so painful, but how good it feels to let people love us in the way that we love everyone, you know?
Yeah, and there's so much more energy available when you're not
bleeding it
on all the time. Like, my friends who know me, I mean, they know I'm not on in the sense where I'm like trying to be impressively on. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it's not that.
energetically.
But energetically,
Oh,
I'm like, what do you need? What am I gonna? Is everybody having a good time? What else? You know what I mean? That is like, exhausting.
Uh-huh.
And
And it's not your side of the street.
oh my God.
You know what I mean? We got to know, what is my
Yeah.
side of the street? What is your side of the street?
Yeah. So thank you, Dad. Thank you, Terry Cole. And I really wanted to say thank you to everybody sitting here, because without saying a word, I feel what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
There is such a feeling in the coherence in this room that we can finish each other's sentences. And some of us are further in the healing than others, and I can feel that too, and I look up to you. But you've been here, and we need to hold arms and help other women across this ocean, because this is the liberation of consciousness. It starts with this, and it's incredible what we create as an invitation for other people when we decide that whatever is real for us is all that's going to be, and everything else, we're just setting it down, and people start to show up in amazing ways, and we have more intimacy in our life. So
Yes.
tell us, as we end, one little thing that everybody could do today that could either improve, set a boundary, create more intimacy, create more expansion in your life from following your guidance.
I think the easiest and quickest thing you could do is take a quick resentment inventory and just figure out, like, who are you holding this heaviness towards? Who are you pissed off at? Who do you feel like is not giving you your due, or you feel taken advantage of by? And just really look at that and go, okay, what needs to happen? What is my 50% of this dynamic? And what needs to happen for this to be different? Where am I not speaking up about my preferences, my desires, my limits, and my deal breakers? Where am I expecting them to know? Or where do I need to set a limit and I'm just not doing it? But that little resentment inventory can act as a GPS of, like, what needs your attention most urgently.
I love that. Where can people get the book? Probably everywhere.
Sure. October 15th is when the book is actually dropping.
Amazing.
So
Are there any like bonuses? if you
yeah,
get the
of
book?
course, there is. First of all, go to hfcbook.com. That's where you can get it. Just go get it, people. That's what we're saying.
Okay, I want to thank you. That was amazing. What I want to do is I want to close with something. I'm going to have us all close our eyes for just a second. So
Okay.
I met with a medium after my dad passed. 3 different people talked to me about this person, and I was like, oh, okay, this is happening. And she shared with me, and it was really the way she shared it, that we all have guides around us all the time. And they are advocating for us. And so I want to do something with all of us on the heels of this conversation that we just had together. So close your eyes for a moment. Put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Take a deep breath in so you feel your belly fill up. Let it go. And with your hand on your heart, just turn towards yourself with as much love and compassion and empathy and grace that you give to others. And thank yourself for making the time in your busy life to give this experience to you, and you made the time. And that's not nothing. And now, in light of this conversation, I'm curious who you can perceive is with you. If it's your grandmother, if it's a parent who's gone before you, who you could perceive, to turn on your radio and see if you can connect to the frequency, that Wi-Fi, turn it on. Who's here? Who's in the space? Who's walking beside you? Who's rooting for you? Who's loving you into life? Who's petitioning at the heavenly gate for the greater good of all that you have? And now I just am curious, if you asked whoever this is, what do I need to set down to make room for more intimacy in my life? What are you able to see that I need to set down, that I'm over functioning around? What would allow for more expansion and ease and flow in my life? Just listen to see if there's any wisdom that comes through. And then maybe ask, what do I need to remember? And may we have the strength to know that we're always held, and that everything is always as it needs to be in divine order. And we can surrender and let God, let the universe, let the world hold what it needs to. And so it is. guys can open your eyes too. Thank you for this. I love women. I love us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks, Cav.